Today is Saturday, February 21st, and this is the Bunny Slippers of Evil Job Seekers Call-In Show, presented by Evil Bunny Consulting. I'm your host, Tyrone Griffin, and if it's 3 p.m. and you have on your bunny slippers, you are not looking for a job. Welcome, first-time and returning listeners. In this show, we discuss strategies and tactics of job search, staying motivated, and dealing with career transition. For more tips, resources, daily motivations, and to listen to archive shows, go to the website bunnyslippersofevil.com. There you'll also find links to the show's Facebook page and Twitter handle. If you are listening live, you can call in with your questions at 347-202-0929. Again, that number is 347-202-0929. And now a word from our sponsors. Evil Bunny Consulting is the alternative to expensive outplacement. They give company-sponsored job seeker workshops as well as the one-on-one job seeker boot camp. For more information, go to www.bunnyslippersofevil.com. Resume Edit is the low-cost, high-quality resume writing company with resumes as low as $35, written by certified resume writers. You can find them online at www.resume4edit.com or call 404-860-2473. And be sure to tell them you heard about them on the Bunny Slippers of Evil Job Seekers podcast. Let 3dresumes.net turn your resume into a web page with a customized domain for 12 months for only $30. Help hiring managers and recruiters find you, make your resume available 24/7, and get a professional, personalized email address just for your job search. You can see my online resume at tyronegriffin.com, and for more information on how to get your own, go to 3dresumes.net. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I hope you had a very good week. We got one of our returning favorites here, but before I get into it, with my good friend Howard, just trying something new this week. Going to be doing some video. So I'm going to test it out and see how I can get this working right. And maybe we'll start putting these shows on the YouTube channel as well. So with that, Howard, are you there?
Good morning, Tyrone. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you this morning, sir?
Very good, thanks.
Well, good. It's always a pleasure to have you back. Always a pleasure to learn and just listen at the feet of the master, as we say.
Thank you. Not sure about that.
Well, I appreciate it. So tell you what. So today we want to continue. We've had past discussions on ongoing trend in behavioral questions. In the past, you gave us the basic of behavioral questions, but today the latest trends, a little deeper into how they're being used in the marketplace. So. Yep. We kind of got two. I mean, we can go into behavior interviews or we can go into the senior job hunt, but we can flip back and forth between them because I think I actually put that on the name for this episode, but we can switch it. So let's talk about the third dimension in behavioral interviews. First question is, what do you mean by the third dimension, Howard?
Yes. Good morning. Well. I learned something this week because when I was called to do some consulting, and they had a very strong technical person who had passed the phone screens, the text screens, etc., and was now going into a behavioral set of interviews. It was going to have two back-to-back panel interviews, and they were going to be about behavioral questions. Mm-hmm. And the recruiter that called me up and asked me, that engaged me to help this person was worried that would he get through these, and so we prepped them on them. But the complications are pretty significant because you're dealing with panel interviews at the same time you're dealing with behavioral interviews. So there's not a lot of known structure about them or how you're going to approach them. And luckily, the recruiter did have some heads up about the kinds of questions and et cetera, and how they would look at this. And having done some research, I also found some forms and background that would tell us how to evaluate that. Mm-hmm. So, a little bit about a third dimension that I had never been working on before. And we had always worked on what was the purpose of behavioral interviews, right? Past behavior predicts future behavior. Right. It tries to get rid of the canned answers, right? Mm-hmm. It tries to see how people think on their feet, right? And there's you can go out and Google and get 1 million common questions for behavioral interviews, right? Mm-hmm. What are your goals? how do you handle conflict? How do you handle your time? How do you do projects, etc. And of course, there's a standard technique that everybody quotes, and it's got some variations. The STAR technique, STAR, right?
Right.
The situation, the tasks, the activity, the results. Those things are pretty traditional. And I've kind of shrunk that a little bit, but and the way to prepare for those questions, in a lot of cases, the way I've taught it is to put together your stories, stories for groups of stars. And we covered this at one of your sessions,
right.
I think 6 months, a year ago. So that's pretty good. That's traditional. I would call it two-dimensional. How do you handle a behavioral interview? Then how do you prepare for the questions? You make stories, and you list your tasks. Okay, and you have stories for common types of questions. So the extra complications can come in if you do panel interviews, and you certainly if they're management interviews. And as every industry goes along, there is increased sophistication. HR tools are getting increasingly sophisticated. So what I found was a national company's approach to how do they evaluate and put together these competencies for behavioral interviews, and it was very appropriate for this set of interviews. And the third dimension to answer the question is why. Why did you do the things you did? So what happens in an interview and the behavioral questions, you can get the initial question out. Here was the situation, here's the actions I took, and then here's the result I got. That's pretty traditional. But that's usually followed up by this third dimension. And I never thought about it, but it's the depth question of why did you think that way? Why did you do that?
Okay.
And so that's something I'm going to be adding to my preparation of candidates for interviews.
Well, that alone, just the idea of having a behavior interview at the same time as you're having a group interview, that alone can drive you crazy.
Absolutely.
Because no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from what I've seen in behavioral interviews, there's no right answer. A lot of times and then when you get other people in the room, then everybody's kind of feeding off each other. And I mean, I don't know how much you really get from that. You know what I'm saying? But
I used to believe that there was no right answer, but there are clearly. It's kind of like watching an ice skating event, and all the judges come up with different ratings of people, but they have an evaluation or a rating sheet.
Okay.
Of what they look like. And the depth and the third dimension that I'm referring to is something I hadn't thought about, but you should always begin with the end in mind. If you don't know how to score, you can't win the game.
Yeah.
And so the reality is, what is it exactly that they're looking for? Just because I give them a good answer, I give them my situation, I give them my actions, I give them my result, doesn't mean I'm really scoring that highly, especially if they have different criteria.
No,
what are they looking for?
I agree with you. I agree with you there.
So I really focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So what happens is I haven't seen anywhere where anyone's emphasizing how are they keeping score of that answer. And if I know how they keep score of that answer, then I can make sure that I'm prepared to handle that answer better and to be able to make sure I'm getting positive points on the score, because they're going to evaluate me on a 1 to 5 scale in terms of how I handled that question.
Right.
What was my competency? Did I miss the mark? Was I average? Or did I really hit something? Right?
You're right. You're right.
And are you familiar with how these things are scored?
No, that's what I was going to ask you. About the scoring. How do they do that with these?
Yeah, exactly. I've never thought about it too much because I'm more prepared on the one side, but I didn't realize the tools that HR has, or that now that they get to the managers that are very sophisticated by large organizations and large companies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to go through today. I thought that would be very interesting for us to talk about.
Okay.
This is the third dimension, the depth. Why did you do this? Because what happens after you answer your question, they ask you a question of, why did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
What was you thinking? What did you learn? And so the initial answer, which is SAR, is really not the complete answers. There's a third definite answer, questions that usually would come up, and will come up increasingly as more companies get more sophisticated in this approach.
Yeah.
So let me tell you about one of the areas of a typical form that I saw. First of all, you get a question, and the question, let's just say we take the question, it might be problem solving. How do you problem solve? In other words, tell me about a time you came up with a process or procedure to solve a problem. This happened to be for an IT guy, so I kind of looked in that area.
Okay.
But and the goal of the question is to see how they probe at sources for answers, how they get effective solutions, how they see hidden problems, how they try to come up with a good analysis so they can see how they approach a problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right. So the first thing they do is the situation. We all know that. You have to describe the situation.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing you do is you make a list of the actions you did. Action 1, Action 2, Action 3, Action 4, Action 5. And then the third thing is the results. Here was the result I got.
Right.
But the other thing that's in this form is the thing a learning probe that they say, well, want to probe at their actions, but probe at their thinking. So in other words, why did the person select that approach?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they choose to do it that way? What was their consideration of alternatives? So you can see that that's a depth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It answers the question of why did they do what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to prepare for questions, you have to have an extra dimension. So maybe I'm going to retitle my preparation for behavioral questions to be SARY, SARY, with the why meaning, why did you do it?
Okay.
And so why is that important is because when you look at how they evaluate the person and the answer to that question, they look for positives and negatives. For example, on the negative side, they might say, well, the person was too much on their own. They didn't rely on others. They didn't get others involved. They may not have taken the time to define or really probe at the essence of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Their answer was disorganized. They didn't. They jumped to conclusions and went too quickly. They used trivial solutions, or they maybe they just weren't prepared in that answer.
Mm-hmm.
On the positive side, they clearly defined the problem first. They could see hidden problems, and they investigated hidden problems. They looked for multiple sources of people and information, and they were eventually, they could see possible consequences of good and bad approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So now these specifics of why they did what they did, it becomes almost the evaluation criteria that puts them from the 3, 4, 5 as opposed to the 1, 2, 3. That makes sense?
Yeah, and not only does it make sense, it's you ask the question, why nobody was asking that? I mean, I think in interviews, people get more into what you did and what the result was. And let's be honest, Howard, you know it. A lot of times, with my phones, I'm not going to worry about that. A lot of times there are things that happen on the job that they turn out a certain way out of pure dumb luck. You know what I'm saying? You did something and it just worked out a certain way. And you're just lucky. And we don't discount luck, we elevate luck because we're always looking at outcomes. It's like, and I don't mean to get on a tangent, but think about this. A couple of weeks ago, we had a Super Bowl, right? And everybody was up in arms about, Pete Carroll making a call, not giving Marshawn Lynch the ball on the 1-yard line. everybody's like, that was the dumbest thing in the world. They should have given it to Marshawn. And I had that argument with people, and I kept saying, had it worked, had that pass worked or been dropped, anything but other than intercepted, everybody would still be saying Pete Carroll was a genius.
Yes.
And instead of, Pete Carroll has been thinking and doing things consistently for years. Nobody complained about him when they worked out. When they didn't work out, all of a sudden, now he's an idiot. But his thinking was the same. And either you like his thinking or you don't. I don't know who's trying to reach me this morning. But either you like his thinking or you don't. But if you don't, then don't like it when things are going well. Don't just not like it when things work out. But don't work out.
That's a great example. Because he had his reasons and his logic and some other.
Yeah.
He had odds in a certain way that he was looking at, and so you could argue back, but every armchair quarterback is not in there every day with those numbers and the odds.
That's right.
And he sees that inside out, so he has a certain methodology and a probability that he's playing. And so, I guess it's a good example.
Yeah.
And I think that's what these these more sophisticated HR tools, in order to sell these tools, you give them a trivial approach, right? So they have these very elaborate forms, but the forms have taken it to a whole new depth in terms of how they probe at it. And what they're trying to determine is, how do you think, or what have you learned, or can you still apply that kind of lesson? And although it was implied before, I don't know if they've ever answered to that level. But at this point, the forms are guiding you to go to a second dimension after you've answered the question using the SAR technique. So you need to have your whys prepared. Why did I think that way?
Well, and I
now,
would.
In some cases.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good.
No, I was just going to say. I would say that.
Well, in some cases, you might put the why into the situation or the front end of it, and lead with that. But you have to have the answer somewhere in case they ask it.
And you know what? What I was going to say is, I think that's the most important thing is really the why. Because the why, again, with decisions, a lot of decisions just happen to work out. Some people, let's be honest, some people are just pure luck. That's all they just lucked out. But if I'm looking at hiring somebody, I would really be more concerned with the why. And I think we, the assumption, or we discount the why and look at the outcome too many times. And then you get people in a situation that doesn't work out. And you're like, well, it worked out well when they were doing this and that and everything else. It's like, but you never knew why they did those things and what's different now. And that is what really becomes the issue. What's different now? Why did you do X, Y, and Z? If I understand why, okay, Howard, you know me, I go everything with job search back to relationships. You're in a relationship with somebody and you don't, they're doing things that are working out and they're doing things and you like them, but you never know why. What kind of relationship is it,
Exactly.
Why?
Well, see, not only the emphasis on result could be that maybe you got a bad result.
Yep.
And the real learning was, why did it work out bad? Did you really know why you made that decision? Do you know what you learned from that? So the result really becomes a little less significant, like you said, because there could be times when it's positive, but there also could be a big learning from a negative result.
And I think they try to get near that when they ask the question of, tell me a time when things didn't work out.
Right.
And they try to,
right.
What they're circling the drain in a way of trying to determine why it didn't work out. But they never take that next step and ask that question of, what were you thinking? Really simple question. It's like you think about it, when we were kids and you did something stupid, what's the first thing your mother asked you? What were you thinking?
What?
What were you thinking? Why did you do that? But in corporate America, we never really ask too much the why. We very much so look at outcomes. I mean, one example, one of my favorite examples of that I just thought of is you think about with Research in Motion, which is now BlackBerry Inc. or whatever. And everybody saw how the iPhone and Android phones came in 2007 and just took their lunch, just destroyed their market. And we can all see the statistics. We can all see how every year their sales dropped and the market share dropped and how they just got destroyed. But nobody has ever asked their co-CEOs why. And to me, that would be the important thing. Why did, and not from a standpoint of you're an idiot, just what were you thinking? Literally, what was going through your head as you saw quarter after quarter, year after year, your market share dropping the way it did? What was your mindset? I mean, and I will admit something. People that know me, one thing they know about me is that's something I'm always been fascinated with. Not necessarily what people do, but why people choose to do the things that they do. That's always just fascinating because it's so many different answers people give you for that.
Yeah, and maybe they had, the important thing is maybe they made the decisions very consciously, but they had certain constraints or parameters or whatever that were put on them or were in the environment, lack of money, a management decision of some kind of legal restraint, or some kind of time frame constraint. Any of those could be the reason why they made the decision they did, and it didn't work, or it did work.
Right.
So it's not that just because you have a bad result doesn't have anything to do with the fact that you have a good thinking and a way of analyzing problems.
Right. You have a good approach. And
it's more about competency of it. Do you really understand what you did and why, right? Proactively.
Yeah. And, that begs the question, okay, if given the chance, would you do it the same way again? And I always want to answer that question, ignoring the outcome a lot of times, looking at the input I had at the time I made decisions, yeah, I'd make them again. I would absolutely make a lot of, because I always feel like there are no bad decisions. You make decisions based on what information you have at the time. Period.
Correct.
And you expect a certain outcome. It's like, we always look at people who are not in the right place and we say, well, they're just a series of bad decision making. No, it's just a matter of the information you had at the time maybe wasn't complete, or maybe you interpreted it the wrong, or not the wrong way. You interpreted it a way differently than you could have. There's a ton of reasons people make decisions, and all those things that go into it. But I think what happens is a lot of hiring managers and companies, they try to short change it. They try to take the shortcut. And, we want people that, think about your resume. Okay, your resume is a list of things that worked out. If you think about it, all the bullets on your resume are things that worked out. Maybe not as well as maybe not as well as you wanted them to, but they worked out pretty well. That's why, those are your quote, your successes. But I look at, one example I always bring up, and no disrespect to him, but you look at Mark Zuckerberg, and people will say that's a brilliant, very savvy, all of this. Let's be honest. Had MySpace not been a mess, we wouldn't be talking about Facebook today. Really, because MySpace owned the space, and they messed up. Yeah. Zuckerberg and Facebook were like the only other thing there. It's like if Sirius and XM, when they were separate companies, and one of them just screwed up, the other one just was the only alternative. So it's we look at outcomes, and our resumes again are a list of outcomes. but not a list of how we think. And that would be very interesting to figure out a way to put that either in the resume or in the interview and try to get to how people think about things versus how things have turned out. Because that's what you're really, when you're interviewing somebody, when you hire somebody, you're investing not in their outcomes, you're investing in how they think.
Yeah, that's why that's what we're getting to in this third dimension.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone out there teaches the whys of to list out your whys.
Yeah.
So what happens in the interview, under the pressure of a panel interview, under the pressure of trying to handle the questions, you're not prepared for the whys, and so you ramble or you take a guess at it, as opposed to logic thinking through the whys you did what you did, so that you can convey methodologies, thinking, and processes and learning lessons. Because they will ask at the end of your basic question, at the end of your basic answer, your SAR answer, they're going to ask you this logical question by one of the panel members is, well, why did you think this, or what were you trying to do, or what else did you look at? What else did you consider to get to the why?
And you know what? And the real question they're asking is, how do you think? That's really what they want to know. How do you think?
Yes, yes, and exactly right. And so I thought about this, and I said, every SAR question is followed up with a probing question. It's logical. It's natural. You don't just take what you say in the SAR. Oh, that's your answer. Okay, good. That's it. You usually say, oh, how'd that work out? Or what else did you learn? Or why was that important? Or what else did you consider? Or did you consider something else? There's always a follow-up question to that we don't prepare for.
Yeah. Hey, Howard, we got 3 minutes left. And I want to make sure that this is a great discussion, first of all. Thank you so much. But I want to make sure people know how to reach you and any special offerings you may have. So let's talk about you for a minute.
Well, thank you. Of course, I'm the founder and head coach at CareerOyster in Atlanta. And we provide customized one-on-one coaching for job transitions. And we have three major parts of our program: resume coach, interview coach, and networking coach. And it's been highly successful at helping people through their transition. You can find me at www.CareerOyster.com. And I offer a free consultation to anyone who comes. And I have a special program running right now where I provide 20% off for anyone that is involved, signs up for services during the first quarter. But come for a free session and ask your questions and find out what I can do to help.
And you do that over the web as well, right?
Of course, yes.
So yeah, because I have some listeners that are around the country, and I think maybe one or two around the world. So I want to make sure that they know how to get to you as well. It's CareerOyster.com, right?
Yes.
Well, I want to say
90 seconds.
I want to say this. Wow, you heard that, didn't you? See, that's one thing. Like I said, I'm playing around with video on this thing, and that's one of the things that I got to work around, because those notices, like 90 seconds and things like that, nobody ever hears them. So I got to play. This is why this is a test to see how I can make this work. But Howard, I want to thank you for one thing. I often do quote you on this show. I often do quote what I've learned from you, your workshops. And also, by the way, even if you're not scheduled to be on, let me know when you have when you're trying to schedule some more workshops, and I'll mention it.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Okay,
sure.
because that was, what was, like 4-hour workshop. That was one of we did one on interviews, and we did the one on resumes, I think. And oh man, Howard, I can't tell you. I still use the stuff. I still talk about the things that I've learned from you about how to approach interviews and so on. But I got about 30 seconds left, 20 seconds. Yeah. But I want to thank you as always, Howard. And I'm going to ask you a question. You will be back, right? Because I know we got a schedule coming up.
Yes, I will. Be happy to.
Okay.
Good.
Well, thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end this, and we'll be talking momentarily. Okay, Howard? Everybody else have a good week. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.